Oh, yes, she was. That'll teach you to vaunt over Arthur.
I was
saying a
right.
thing like
I said
that.
it couldn't possibly be.
Yes, it was the tone. I heard the tone. Who gave the true definition?
Badly as it was done.
Yes.
Reviled as I was, boo is my heart.
So, goodness me, we draw peacefully to a close because with the score standing 4 on the one hand, 4 on the other, nobody is the winner, but let's face it, everyone is the winner. 3 cheers. Have a look at the others. Yes, there they are. Well, there, how pleasant it is. We'll have another slew of seconds from the Oxford English Dictionary next time. Till then, goodbye from Patrick Lichfield, Robin Bailey, Clare Francis, Lynsey de Paul, Frank Muir, and Arthur Marshall. Goodbye. Hello again. Call my bluff and telling the whoppers Arthur Marshall.
Good evening. Very happy to find myself here again once more with, on my left, Lynsey de Paul. And again on my right, Robin Bailey.
And dealing from the bottom of the pack as usual, Frank Muir.
Evening. Well, didn't win last week, but we drew. So we have a game to win this week. Clare Francis. And on my left, Lord Lichfield.
It usually begins that way, and we get a word, pishkun, I would say. Anyway, Arthur Marshall and his team defined this word 3 different ways. 2 of them are bogus, 2 of the definitions. One's okay, and that, of course, is the one that Frank and Co. try to pick. What of pishkun, Arthur?
Well, Frank and friends, as you know, on this programme, we very often find ourselves with the Red Indians. And on this occasion, it's with the Blackfoot tribe. And when they want to round up buffalo, they build a pishkun. And a pishkun is a sort of avenue made of boulders and rocks and felled trees, leading into a fenced enclosure. Then they round up the buffaloes and stampede them and make them dash through the pishkun and into the fenced enclosure.
This is exciting stuff, Arthur.
Well, isn't it?
Yes. Robin Bailey's turn now.
Well, I don't know.
It's a word that comes to us from Persia, and it's the name they have for an underground river or watercourse. There's a whole network of them in Persia. Combined, laid end to end, they would stretch for something like 8,000 miles. And particularly in an area in the desert, around a place called Kubi Jupa.
Scooby-Dooby.
Never be. These watercourses run only about 50 feet below the ground, and this gives rise to a lot of artesian wells. I suppose, in the manner of G.K. Chesterton, the Persians don't care where the water gets if it doesn't get into the oil.
Yes, bullseye. Now, Lynsey de Paul.
It's pronounced Pishkun, and it's a Burmese word, and it's a festival that happens every single year in Burma, and it's every sort of revelry and diversion you can think of. There's games and sports, and in fact, in 1922, the National Geographic magazine even reported that there was a competition for the best joke-telling in fancy dress.
Oh, Frank.
Arthur!
Rather your sort of thing.
No, you fancy dress,
now.
Arthur. I think you'd be better.
I think that would count as fancy dress, Frank, out there.
Yes.
But still, no, I won't go on. It's an enclosure for buffalo. It's a Burmese festival, great fun, and it's an underground river. Guess where? Yes, Persia.
Frank.
Well, now, very interesting, these. Absolutely riveting. Got little notes here. Buffalo enclosure, no. What is a water course? Is it a river, or can it be underground?
A small river, I think.
No. At a Burmese festival of the arts, Pishkun. I don't think it's any of them, but wedged in a corner as I am, I'm going to choose the buffalo enclosure of Uncle Arthur.
Well, he said
It doesn't sound at all
Arthur,
right.
show up, own up.
No. Oh,
Yes. Have an unerring instinct. I don't think Arthur can lie. However, we may see. Let's have another word, because that did mean a buffalo enclosure. Thrall is the next one. Frank, it's your turn.
Dialect word, art, dialect word. As you can tell, thrall, Old Saxon word. And what it means is terribly interesting. It refers to
Don't push
one
on
of the two... Was I funny?
Press on. Press on,
It was
Gavin.
one of the two holes through which man, woman, or animal inhales or exhales during the process of aerobic respiration. It's Anglo-Saxon dialect for nostril.
Nostriling.
Nostril. One of the holes at the bottom of your nose. You may have noticed them while bathing.
Now it is Patrick Lichfield's turn.
Well, I'm sure you'll be familiar with these lines. Are we to pay rates to feed and clothe this senseless troll? Now, troll, the absence of the H there, implies it's Irish. And in fact, that is a piece from James Joyce's work, which you may remember. However,
I think they seem to, yes, from the look of them.
troll, or a thrall, whichever way you like to pronounce it, is a useless Irishman, it's a Dublin phrase, who seems to be happy with his own ignorance and seems to get in everybody else's way. And when Joyce wrote Exiles, he included that immortal phrase.
Okay, right. Clare.
Well, it's a thrall, my dears, and it's down on the farm that you find this, or used to, and it's a wide but shallow wooden dish into which the milk, straight from the cow, is put, and they leave the milk in the thrall to separate into cream and milk. And then either they skim off the cream, or they draw the milk through a spigot in the bottom of the thrall.
Where were we, dear, with your lovely accent?
Yes. Yes. Somewhere outside London.
I couldn't quite place it.
It wasn't Kensington.
So it's a crock in which you keep milk. It's also the Anglo-Saxon for nostril, and it's ignorant Irishman who gets in everyone's way. So Arthur must choose one of those.
Well, now, this wooden Somersetshire, whatever it was, this wooden dish for cream, it could well be. I really don't think it can be James Joyce and the troll and the useless Irishman and this and that. Of course, Frank's nostril is terribly tempting. I mean, in the word sense.
I'm very fine. Flared.
Quite so. But I think, on the whole, that it's Clare's wooden dish full of cream and whatnot.
That's what she said. Was she teasing you, Arthur, I wonder?
Oh, Arthur.
Yes, she was. Nothing to do with anything that she said. Something else has to be the true definition. Which is it?
Oh,
Oh, it is.
Oh,
It
yes.
is. It's
Yes. Very near, very near.
Never mind.
Thrall is nostril. Or was, I should say. 2-0 at the moment. Well, the next word is Ridley, and Robin Bailey will tell you about it.
Well, Ridley is a word that we're unlikely ever to hear in the long room at Lord's. It's the name given, that beastly invention, the underhand ball, which bounces at least twice before it reaches the batsman. And it gained its name, Ridley, from an unspeakable little bounder during his days at Harrow, known as N.C. Ridley. He had some success with this evil invention, took a number of wickets, and I hope came to a very sticky end, preferably at Old Trafford.
Let us ask you then, Lynsey, your turn.
Ridley. Ridley is a species of marine turtle. It's very small and it's sort of olive green, and you find it in New England. And according to New Englanders, they have a foul temper, these little Ridleys, and when they land on their back, they can die almost immediately out of rage and frustration.
What an appalling thought.
Now, Arthur.
Come with me to the fenlands of East Anglia, where you will find Ridleys galore, because they are great banks of stone and seashells. And when the Bedford level was being created, that great stretch of water, you remember, Frank?
Yeah,
18th
indeed,
century?
yes.
A lot of Ridleys got in the way and were a danger to navigation and had to be blown up by gunpowder.
It's a sort of stone bank. It's an an underhand bowl, underarm as well, I dare say, yes. And it's a marine turtle. Patrick.
Well, I don't know. I went to Harrow, and when I was there, they were called grubbers or creepers. They weren't called Ridleys. But
No, this was in 1830, and I imagine you were there rather more recently.
Lynsey's turtle, I don't quite think it would have been called Ridley. No, I've don't like any of these, nor do any of us. I've got no help from my right at all.
You sure about that bouncing ball not?
Well, as Robin said, I was there rather later. Only just, but I mean, yes, Ridley.
Terribly sad you had so many names for bouncing balls, I must say.
Well, I think since we don't like those other two, nor yours much more, Arthur, but I think the stone bank's the thing I want to go for.
Stone bank. Well, Arthur said that, rather an uncolourful definition, but there. Oh, it was a bluff! He fooled you with that plain definition. Who gave the true one? Lo, where it comes.
Yes.
It was the turtle.
Yes. The turtle, the marine turtle, seems to be a certain amount of recrimination on the other side.
Yes.
Too late for all that. Garrow is the next one. Patrick Lichfield.
You will be dumbfounded if you listen.
Press on.
To hear what a garrow is, rhymes with barrow or harrow, which you've just had. But a garrow is actually a member of a slant-eyed tribe. They live in the mountains west of Tibet. I know it sounds unlikely, but what's more unlikely about them is that they're famous for only one thing, which is that they leave all their money and inheritance, not to the eldest son, as is done here and known as primogeniture, but they leave it actually to their youngest daughter. Now, isn't that a weird thing? Don't go east, young man, I'd say.
Clare.
I'm all in favour. I'm a youngest daughter. Sorry, a garrow. Well, it's known also to anglers as Garrow's glory. It's a fishing fly, and it was invented by the Reverend Eliot Garrow, sometime rector of Keswick. And it's coloured a sort of sepia brown and orange, and in certain conditions it's said to be absolutely irresistible to trout.
Yes, all fishing flies are said to be that, you know. And they never are. Anyway, but perhaps this one was then. Frank.
Garrow is a circus feat, which is a little joke entwined in that, because it's like a Risley act. You know, Risley act, where the chap lies on his back on a table and juggles a table with his feet. Well, in a garrow, you juggle many things, As long as there's more than one, it's a garrow and not a rislier.
Hence the joke.
That was the joke. Feet.
I
you
get
see.
it, yes.
F-E-A-T.
Do you get it? It's really feet.
Yes, I worked it out.
I always think it helps during a show to bring in a little musicality. So this feet is probably from gara, which is the Romany word for football.
Let me tell you then, they say that it's an oriental tribesman. It's a fishing fly, and it's juggling with feet. I mean, they don't pick up the feet and juggle it. No, they do the juggling with the feet. That's it. Sorry about that. Robin.
Yeah, well, I'm looking across at this slant-eyed tribe over here. If I can gain any evidence, and I can't. I don't think it's to do with the youngest daughter. I don't think if I were a trout, I'd be taken in for a second by a garrow. It's very unlikely also, isn't it, that it's throwing tables around with your feet. That's what I think it is, though.
You are choosing that. Oh, Frank, yes. True or bluff?
He struck me like a snake. But it's not.
Who gave the true definition of garrow? One of them must have done. Or the state totters. There it is. It's the Oriental tribesmen, and they do have this particular rule about leaving all the cash to the youngest daughter, it seems. Guga is the next one. Lynsey.
Guga. Guga. It's sort of onomatopoeic. It's of the violin family. It's an instrument used in the Balkans, and it's only got one string, which makes its range rather limited. But you stick it under your chin, you see, with a bow, like a violin, and it goes guga, guga. So that's how you get the word
Come
guga.
to West, isn't it? 5 miles long.
I believe I believed it until that last.
Yeah, so
No. Wait and see. 2 more to come. Arthur.
Guja is a thin rope of hair made from the lovely long tresses of ladies from the Injaka tribe in South America. And I'm sorry to tell you that the only known use of the guja is to slip it round as a noose round an adversary's throat and go and throttle him. That's all I have to say about gujas.
You look positively bloodthirsty when you did that, Arthur. Heavens. Robin Bailey's turn.
It's a bird. It's not an Irish bird. That would be a thrush. It comes from the west of Scotland, and it's a young gannet, that bird that looks somewhere between a seagull and an albatross. Clare would tell you about those. They both can be very unlucky birds according to where you're standing at the time they pass over. The odd thing about the guga, the gannet is a very hungry, not to say greedy bird. And when the guga, the young gannet, has grown to something approaching maturity and is ready to fly, it very often can't because it's eaten so much it's too fat to take off.
Oh,
Greedy, greedy.
It's a sad story.
what a sad story.
It's a rope of hair used for those purposes of destroying the enemy. It's a species of gannet, and it's a musical instrument. Clare, to choose.
Musical instrument.
Well, you've just changed your mind.
Well, I've never mind.
Come along, come along.
Well, Lynsey, I mean, I was really believing you about this Balkan violin thing until this Gugar came along.
I don't know.
And I thought, well, no. And
it's very
also, it would make very boring music, really. And I'm sure they could do better. I'm sure they could do
Background.
better.
Background.
But the thin rope of hair and the strangulation, I mean, no. I mean, why not use something more efficient? I mean, hands or... Well, I'm not quite sure, really. But we were very keen on the bird. We're very keen on the bird. Are we not now keen on the
Yeah,
bird?
well, yes.
You said together we sink or swim, you said.
Yes, I said that, yes.
Yes, now he's backing out.
No, I'm
But-
not.
No,
I'm
you're
with
not.
you.
Oh, good.
Together you fly.
Okay.
You
I think,
bold thing.
are we
Come
going
on.
to... We're going to stick on the bird.
The bird, you stick on the bird, make it sound like a game of pontoon, really.
Yes.
Robin said that,
going-
didn't he? True or bluff?
I'm afraid it has to take wing.
Oh, yes. cougar, gannet. Same thing. You know, different sort of gannet, though, I suppose. Talk is the next one, Clare?
Well, talk is a cold meat dish that you can get from a Finnish delicatessen. You know, there are so many of those around. Well, you can get it from there. And what it is very thin strips of smoked reindeer, which you roll up, and you put a cocktail stick through this roll of talk, and you dip it into a sauce made from sloes, and it's absolutely delicious.
Made from what?
Sloes.
Oh, sloes.
You know, like sloe gin, but sloes. Absolutely lovely.
Have you eaten it, dear?
Oh, not terribly often. No.
You said that quite like a doctor. She looks all right to me. Anyway, Frank.
Talking of doctors, it could be said in the medieval days that careless talk cost lives. Because it was Thank you for your approbation. A talk was an object in many a medieval surgeon and GP's little black bag. It gets a bit nasty from now on. It was basically art. Basically, it was a tube, and the object of it was to insert it in a arrow wound. When the surgeon got to it, and he sort of wiggled it into the wound in order to get the nasty stuff out. I don't wish to go into it any further than that. Talk.
You've managed to laugh and see our brave face on it, Patrick.
A talk's really an adornment, a male adornment. If you happen to be in ancient Britain and were going out to the disco, you would sort of... There wasn't much to dress yourself up with, because you probably only had a few sort of skins and a bit of woad. And so you used your talk, which was actually a kind of neck thing. It was a thing that was made of twisted hair or even metal that went round your neck. And really, I suppose an earlier form of tie, but probably more comfortable than this piece of haberdashery.
My dear, it sounds perfectly lovely.
Well, it's a sort of surgical instrument, a tube. It's smoked reindeer that Clare says is okay to eat, and it's a rather ancient necklace or necktie. Lynsey, make your choice.
We're conferring.
Half a jiff.
Half a jiff.
Yes.
That's what you say.
You'll have to learn his lingo, my dear.
But I will go along with the...
Oh, Lord.
Right.
Well, there.
Medieval medical instruments, eh? Stuck in wounds and nasty things extracted. That's what you say, don't you? It sounds very convincing, but I don't know if they actually had anything like that in those days. But I'm reserving judgment. And as for a tie, I actually don't believe that they had ties. It was it was a leftover of a jabot, wasn't it? It was
sort of collar thing. Yeah.
A collar thing.
Well, a collar thing.
And delicacy, strips of reindeer. Sounds quite lovely. Well, they say, but I feel something else.
No, dear, you go ahead.
Yes,
go ahead.
Well, I actually think it's the medical instrument.
You do you?
I don't know why. I'm going to get egg on my face any moment.
We'll see. Frank, tell her.
Oh, gosh.
Coming, Robert.
Oh, dear.
Here's the highest.
Oh,
No.
Never mind.
Wasn't that? Was one of the others. Who gave the true definition of talk? Eccola. Yes. It's the sort of hairy necklace that they wore around their necks when dressing up with a bit of woad, as Patrick said. Ambetti, or ambety, Arthur?
Ambetti. Well, now, it's a loose-fitting sort of silk blouse that first was worn in London society in about sort of 1860, 1830 maybe. And it came from London society going constantly to the opera, where they saw an Italian tenor called Giordano Ambetti, B-E-T-T-I in that case, who was a very popular tenor singer in opera. And he wore this sort of loose-fitting robe, presumably on his way to the psychiatrist, but who shall say? A loose-fitting silk robe. And they thought they were lovely, and they called the London people, wore them, and called them Ambettis.
Right, Robin Bailey's turn.
Well, I get all the birds. I mean, don't misunderstand me. It's a chicken. Jamaican chicken. And it has mottled black and white plumage. And in the early 1800s, Admiral Collingwood was in the West Indies, and he captured, or had caught for him, 6 Ambettis, so that he was never without an egg for his breakfast. How useful is the Ambetti?
Lynsey de Paul now.
Amberty is an adjective, and it's a descriptive word. It's for glass, and it's glass that's not completely transparent. It's very slightly opaque, which makes it extremely good for leaded glass and mullioned glass, and when it's painted, it's very good for stained glass. In fact, that's the sort of glass that you use mainly for stained glasses, and you see it in churches and other places where there's glass. Places.
Right. It's that sort of glass. Translucent. Can't quite, it's not clear, but it's not opaque. Sort of chicken, and a loose-fitting blouse.
Well,
Frank's choice?
I'm putting the blouse to one side at the moment. I cannot believe there's a big deal with a black and white chicken, which most chickens were black and white or brown. And the idea of, wow, Jamaica, 6 chickens, Zowie, came from the Admiral, just doesn't ring true. I mean, everybody had chickens. I mean, they have more chickens than they have now. The glass is trying to make it sound as though it's amber-y and not perfectly clear. Seems a bit of a ruse to us.
A what?
We think, not that I've consulted the others, but we, in the royal we, think it might be old Arthur and his lovely blouse.
Old Arthur's blouse.
Yes. Own up, Arthur. True or bluff?
Really getting away with it, aren't they?
Oh, no.
No. Now, let us see who gave the true definition. Here it comes. Have to know it. Aha! She fooled you with all that innocent prattle, didn't she? Yes, indeed she did. It's glass that you can't quite see through as clearly as all that. 5-2. I suspect this may well be our last word. Frank, Mortrell.
Mortrell is the bronze or iron decorated figurehead, usually originally a ram, which was placed on the prow of galleons who were used for ramming purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Well, you'd have to have something like that, certainly.
Yes.
Patrick, it's your turn.
Really, Mortrell is an oldie-worldy name for bread and milk. It's quite simply a children's something that they supped. And before it was called bread and milk, it was quite simply called Mortrell. And that's really all there is to say about it, because it's probably disgusting.
Clare.
Well, a mortrell was an iron frame shaped rather like a bedstead, which was weighted down with stones over graves in the last century. And it was put there by, I don't know if I can say this, I'll try, resurrectionists as a protection against body snatchers, because you know how important they thought it was for the body to be undisturbed until it could be resurrected. So this bedstead was put over the grave to protect it.
It's a figurehead used in battle, I think. It's a cover over a grave to keep the corpse inside if anyone wanted to pinch it, and it's bread and milk, in short. Arthur's choice.
I can't believe it's bread and milk. How dreadful name for poor children having to eat a mortel. However, a delicious bread and milk is, never mind.
Is
the
it?
Figurehead... What?
I just said, is it?
It is if you've got
This
tonsils.
figurehead ramming sort of thing. I'm sorry to end the programme on a sombre note, but dear, I think it's your iron frame for keeping bodies down.
Goodness, it was Clare who said that. True or bluff?
Sorry.
Oh, no. So it isn't as sombre as all that. Who gave the true definition?
Oh,
Yes!
never mind.
And you came on as a connoisseur of bread and milk.
Very difficult.
I just have to bring the whole thing to a close. Draw stumps. Declare the score, which is 6-2, and so Frank and Co. have won. We shall be chipping a few more barnacles out of the OED again next week. Till then, goodbye from Robin Bailey, Patrick Lichfield, Lynsey DePaul, Clare Francis, Arthur Marshall, and Frank Muir.
Good night.
Goodbye. Hello, this is Call My Bluff with the man who trained Baron Munchausen, Frank Muir.
Evening. Both my guests tonight are new to the game, which is nice. And my first is an award-winning biographer, and she's a critic and a journalist, and it's Victoria Glendinning. My second guest is a rather distinguished actor who's had a huge success in television recently, but on the other side, so I mustn't mention the name of the show. But tonight he hasn't got his brass hat on. It's Timothy West.
And in the blue corner, the captain of the SWATs, Arthur Marshall.
Good evening, and proud indeed to be captain of a team which includes, on my left, Sue Cook. And on my right, that excellent actor, Michael Jayston.
Enough of the pleasantries. Let's get on with the work. The first word appeared, well, two words really. Well, it's one with a hyphen, co, no, and as you may recall, Frank and co will define co, no, three different ways. One of the definitions is true. That's the one, of course, that Arthur and co look for, and the other two are no good. So, co, no, off you go.
I've suddenly got a bit worried. Are you Arthur, or have you ever been a Zen Buddhist?
Not yet.
Ah. Well, this is a Zen Buddhist thingy, because I in fact, have difficulty in filling in a license application form or understanding the questions. But if the Zen Buddhists wish to test their mental application, they are given a kono to solve. And the whole point about kono is it's a riddle which is logically insoluble. And one of the most abstruse of these is a rather charming name, if I can remember it. It's called The Paradox of the Three Hurdles of Hang Alon.
Perfectly ghastly.
But it's logically insoluble. What do they have to say? Do they say, I give up, or...?
Well, they sort of sit cross-legged and look at each other and hope that a silent period comes on.
Yes, I'm just trying to be helpful, you know, Frank. You can fill in the detail. Timothy West's turn now.
No, Kono is a southeasterly wind which blows across the Gulf of Siam regularly at the time of the spring equinox. And it is so regular and so predictable that Siamese fishermen have taken to the habit of laying up their boats when the equinox approaches and stopping work until the wind has abated itself.
OK, right, now what does Victoria Glendinning tell us?
Well, Kono is a board game played with counters, and it's a traditional board game of Korea. And like most board games, it's pretty uneventful. All you have to do is move your counters into the squares vacated or by other people's counters. It's a board game.
That's why they're called board games.
Because everybody's so very bored, yes.
Tell that to Korchnoi. I don't know about uneventful. Anyway, this is what they say. It is a sort of a wind. It's this Korean board game, and it is a logically insoluble riddle from I can't quite remember where, but Arthur, you probably do. He chooses.
There we are. Now, Timothy's wind.
Would you rephrase that?
I don't go for your wind, really. Frank, on and on you went with the dreadful Zen Buddhist thing. It was simply appalling. And, of course, it may well be right. But I think, on the whole, we are of one mind here. That it's Victoria's Korean board game.
Oh, she did say it was the uneventful board game. True or bluff, Victoria? It's a bullseye. Yes, we were all in one mind. It is a Korean board game.
Beginner's luck.
Well, now we have another word. Manul, and Arthur will tell you about this.
A manul is the native name on the island of Tahiti for a meeting place. It's a sort of communal hut, presumably where the Tahitian Women's Institute gather for their monthly meetings. And it's a thatched affair, and the eaves slope down to within about 4 feet of the ground, but it's very, very high in the middle, a sort of spire-like central pole, which goes up to about 40 feet.
No.
Yes.
They can be very tall, of course, in Tahiti, can't they?
That's why they have this very, very high centrepiece.
It all seems to fit in somehow, doesn't it? Let's ask Michael Jayston now. What does he say?
A manul is a primitive stone implement used by Stone Age man and presumably Stone Age woman. It was a smooth oval stone used for grinding cereals and other foodstuffs, and it was also used as a doorstop.
We use a piece of wedgewood.
What?
Now whose turn? Yes, Sue Cook.
Well, it's actually pronounced manual, not manuel. That's not a Spanish waiter, it's manual. And it's a kind of liquid which is distilled from the resin of certain hardwood trees, and rather like ambergris it's used to make scents and perfumes. I think what might help you to clinch this is that the chemical name is bicyclic diterpenoid alcohol, which sounds ghastly, but it does actually make ladies smell very nice in the end.
They say then that it's this stone implement, that it's a constituent of scent, it's the basis of scent, and it's this Tahitian meeting house for the Tahitian WI or thereabouts now. Frank, choose one of those.
I'm worried about art and this 40-foot-high hut.
If it were lower, would it not worry quite so
It
much?
wouldn't worry me quite as much, because I can't think why it's that high. It's not to let the snow roll off it, is it? Do they dance on each other's shoulders 8 high or something? Oh, I forget. Stone primitive interval, man tool. I think we're being rused there, don't you? Or the scents. How would a scent be called manul or I don't know. I think it's Sue Cook.
You think it is? She said that it was the constituent of scent.
Yes.
Let's see. Was she teasing you? Sue, own up. You were right. Manul is the basis of scent, one of the bases that you can make scent out of or upon. What's this? A stramazon, I would call it. Timothy West, your turn.
A stramazon, like the caricada or the passata, is a stroke, an offensive stroke, made very offensive sometimes, made by a sword or a cutlass. And the stramazon is actually a vertical stroke at your opponent's head, and if you know what you're doing, it's probably fatal.
Right. Now, Victoria.
A stramazon is a kind of very high, elaborate Mexican saddle to go on a horse. In fact, it should really be pronounced tramazon. And it was used for very grand dignitaries in Mexico to go in processions. And sometimes they had, a stramazon would have sort of brocaded sides and elaborate cushions, and sometimes even a kind of balcony thing over the top. A very elaborate saddle for a horse.
Right, Frank.
Its Stramazon is an ancient, poetic word for that shimmering curtain of shifting lights in northern skies called the... I can't spell it, but it's called the Aurora Borealis. And it is mentioned in literature. Tennyson. Tennyson, you know, of course, The Mort of D. Arthur, Tennyson's poem. And while yet he held the torch, swung in an arch, it burnt like the Stramazon of Arctic night.
What was he doing swinging it in an arch, I wonder?
I would rather not answer that. For reasons which will become clear later.
Well. So they say it's sort of aurora. It is the a poetic way of describing the Aurora Borealis. It's a Mexican saddle, and it's a especially vicious sort of sword stroke. And Michael Jayston has his choice of those.
Well, I know Amazon in Spanish means a woman rider, so I'm going to discount Victoria's for that reason, because it sounds too much like a cross between a female rider on a horse. And also, I think if I knew my Mort d'Arthur, I would know whether that was true or not either. I'm going to discount Frank's as well. I don't know my Mort d'Arthur, but I'll take a guess that it's not in there. I'm going to go for Tim's, the sword, the stroke of a sword.
That's what he said. True or bluff, he owns up. Yea, verily. A Stramazon describes a particular blow or pass with the sword. What we have here is weir or wheer, I don't know. Michael, your turn.
Whir. Whir. And I pronounce it with that kind of vehemence because it is a word of command. Whir. And the pronunciation varies from district to district. Is a command that a shepherd shouts at his sheep. He uses it when driving the flock from one place to another. A repeated whir, whir.
Get out.
To get them to gee up. Exactly. Or to get them to move on. Whir.
Yeah, right. Now, Sue.
Well, whir is actually a relic of the Anglo-Saxon language. It's an adjective and it means proud and haughty or sort of arrogant demeanour. And the word is first recorded, sorry to bring literature up again, but if you know the 10th century epic poem Beowulf, do you?
Backwards.
All 3,000 lines of it?
Unfortunately, not forwards.
Well, if you knew it all 3,000 lines, you'd find that the word whir does appear in that. It's Anglo-Saxon.
Righty-ho. Now it is Arthur's turn.
A whir is a noose or a halter, properly made of hazel twigs, bound together, Frank. But it has been known to be made of willow twigs. And up in about 1750 in Wales, particularly in Monmouth, they used these whirs, I'm afraid, to hang criminals with or from.
Well, then, it is that particular sort of noose. It is the command of a shepherd urging the dog on, or backwards, or forwards, or sideways, and it also means proud, haughty. Timothy, your choice.
Well, it doesn't sound to me like a Welsh word, and I always think that anybody who challenges you about Beowulf is onto a fairly good wicket. I've heard shepherds cry other things to their sheep, but I think in balance, I think probably Michael's shepherd's cry is the one.
You think so? It was indeed Michael Jayston who said it. He has to own up. True or bluff? Yes, indeed. Whir is what shepherds go round saying to sheep. If you've ever wondered, now you know. Glassock is the next word. Victoria Glendinning.
A glassock is a relative of the codfish. It's one of the codfish family, and it's a kind of local regional name for this particular relative called a coalfish. And it's called a coalfish because when you handle it, a sort of black deposit comes off on your hands. And glassock isn't the only name for this coalfish. In other parts of England, it could be called a blocken or a moolfish or a black pollack. But a glassock, it's all the same.
My dear, Good heavens.
Right. Frank.
Hello. A glass hook is really a glossing jack. And I'm not taking questions on this definition because there are gaps in my knowledge. It's a glossing jack, which is really, it's a circular piece of bevel plate glass with a handle. And it's used for polishing leather. Why polish leather? little bit of wax, and zoom, 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 circular motion, and you polish the leather.
OK, so now, Timothy West, his go.
Glassocks were the followers of the Reverend James Glass, who in 1728...
I wouldn't do any more.
Was the... No, I must tell them. Was the founder of a religious sect, a particularly militant religious sect within the Church of Scotland. And I don't think in a family programme like this one should go into the details of the beliefs and practices of this sect, but suffice to say that in 1731 the Reverend James Glass was unfrocked, and quite right too.
All put a stop to, was it? Well, it's they say that it's something for polishing leather, should you want to, kind of a fish, and this religious sect. So Sue Cook has her choice.
Lucky Sue. Come on,
Well, all right, I'll have to say something. The codfish sounded so likely with the black deposit coming off on your hands and all that in a way I'm inclined to discount it. On the other hand, the Reverend James Glass sounded so unlikely that I think I'll still discount it. So,
feminine logic.
I think that sort of leaves me reluctantly with Frank's glossing jack or whatever it was for polishing leather. Was that right? I think I'll go for that.
You're going for old Frank's polishing jack.
Change your mind.
True or bluff?
No, well...
Frank got to own up now. No, wasn't old Frank that time. No. Who gave the true definition? Let's see. We must know. There.
Oh, my word.
Well, I did say it sounded like
It was the fish. It was the fish that goes under other names in other places. Now, pongal is the next word. Sue Cook tells you about it.
Well, I'm probably telling you what you know already. The pongal is, of course, that very flat, bare plain in northeast Hungary near the border of Romania. You probably know that. It's very flat, very treeless, 800 miles square. And the reason it's so bare, really, is that there's certain mineral salts in the soil, which mean that really nothing grows in it. So it remains flat and bare, and probably will do and has done for years. That's the pongal.
What is a sad story?
Let us now hear from Arthur Marshall.
The pongal is the New Year festival of the Hindus. Well, really. At a time when they move from one to the other with cries of, Happy Pongal. And I'm glad to tell you that it coincides with the new crop of rice. And one of the great points of the festival, the ceremonial, is the boiling up of the first boiling of rice.
Well, right, yes, who knows? Could be very exciting. Michael's turn now.
A pongal was a coin, it's now obsolete, which was a currency in New Guinea in the Pacific, and it was 100th part of a kyat, K-Y-A-T. Further information is that in 1878, there were 5 pongal charged on any ship that was moored in Port Moresby.
Well, they say it's a Hindu festival. It's a treeless plain in Hungary, and it is a sort of a coin. So, Victoria, your choice.
Or the coin, whichever.
Well, I just don't believe Arthur today. He's just not convincing me today.
Oh, my dear.
I know it's terrible.
Oh.
We won't let it come between us. And I don't think I believe... I think I believe Sue. I think it's this plain in northeast Hungary where nothing grows.
You don't want to say anything about the third definition? It does seem rather pointed to leave it out. I mean, you know...
Yes, it was no offence was meant at all.
Quite so. Quite so. You just didn't think much of it, I know. So, you're choosing Sue's definition. Yes, that was the treeless plain in Hungary. True or bluff? No. That's called something quite different. Who gave the true definition?
What about all that scoffing?
Yes,
all the
indeed.
rest?
There. It is indeed. A Pongal is a Hindu festival, whether you like it or whether you don't like it. Yes, well, they'll never stamp it out, though. Oborek is the next word, and it's Frank to define it.
Oborek. Oborek is an ancient Egyptian measurement of length about a third longer than a royal cubit.
Royal what?
Cubit.
Oh, yes.
Nothing to do with building bridges. It's a cubit. It's a third longer than a royal cubit, because it is in fact the diagonal of a square, each side of which measures a cubit. And in modern English lineage, it is 14.08 inches.
Inches aren't very modern, are they? I thought it was metres now. However, I know I must not stir the pot. I mustn't do it.
Is that all? Have you finished?
I can give you a few centimetres if I can have a moment with my calculator.
I think we should pass on. Invite Timothy West to have a go.
In the 1880s, the oborek was, I think, far the most popular of the Polish national dances. It is a kind of very lively, very vigorous mazurka, and Chopin, of course, wrote a lot of music that which was very nice to dance the oborek to. I think his Opus 56 No. 2 will spring to mind.
And the opposites are
Yes. It seems to have done. The audience were nodding appreciatively.
Wake up!
Victoria, your turn.
Oborek is something that keeps the feet of Siberian peasants warm in that long, cold winter. It's a domestic flue, not the illness, but like a pipe of hot air that goes under the floor of their houses or huts and channeling the heat from some great central furnace elsewhere in the village. And sometimes they bore holes in the floor and have a little grating and put their feet over it so they can sit with their feet over the oborek, keeping warm.
It is then an ancient Egyptian measure about 14.5 inches long. A flue that you can warm your feet over, and it is a very vivacious Polish dance. Arthur has his choice.
Frank's was so detailed. You did do it well.
I remember it.
I can't believe an Egyptian length is called an oborek. I really can't. Well, now, these wild Polish mazurkas, of course, it could well be that. But the Siberian foot warmer, the flue, sounds so totally impossible and dotty. Why should they call it anyhow? Victoria, we think it's you. We are as one here.
Own up now, Victoria. True or bluff?
Oh!
Yes. Oh, yes. They don't warm their feet in that way. Something else must have meant oborek, or it might be the other way round. Oborek must mean something else. One of the other two definitions, and there it is! I don't know whether Chopin did do any, but he might well have done, but it is that kind of Polish dance. Let's have another word. Kinkin is the next word. Arthur, your turn.
This is quite simple. It's a method of laying bricks in a sort of herringbone crisscross pattern. And you want to know where they do this particularly. Come with me to Staffordshire, to the pottery works. Step inside a kiln. I mean, not when they've lit it up. Step inside a kiln, and looking round, you will see the kinkin, all the bricks laid in this sort of herringbone pattern.
Garden paths do it.
Well, garden paths if you wish, but I'm particularly dealing with Staffordshire kilns. Pottery.
You won't believe this, but I was in a Staffordshire kiln about a month ago.
Were you?
Yes, I didn't notice any herringbones there.
Well, you should have looked more closely.
Except the managing director's suit.
Let us invite Michael now to define.
A kinkin is a beautiful species of Chinese pigeon, and it's bred especially for its pinky rose plumage. It's used as live decoration in the gardens of some Chinese houses.
Right, Sue.
Well, a kinkin is a smallish barrel, really, of no particular capacity or size. It used to be used in Scotland a lot. I don't think it's used much these days because now they've invented the bottle and the plastic container and that sort of thing, and the poor old kinkins got phased out. But it used to be used for provisions like vinegar or buttermilk or liquid bleach or whatever, and Scottish grocers used to buy them by the kinkinful.
Well, it's, they say that it's Chinese pigeon, pink pigeon it is, sort of a barrel, died out a bit these days, and bricks laid in a sort of herringbone pattern in Staffordshire, and possibly even in Egham. Frank, your choice. You weren't listening.
Well, I drifted away a bit, but I don't live in Egham. I don't know.
No. I don't believe anyone does.
Egham is most grateful for both things, for being mentioned, and I don't live there. We think that Kinkin as a barrel is trying to ruse us into confusing it with Pipkin and Tintin and things. Whether it's a Chinese pigeon or the other Chinese pigeon, the only pink pigeon is Mauritian pigeon, but we think that's what it is. Flash the card, lad.
Yeah, true. He did say it was a pink pigeon. True or bluff? He owns up. Nothing. If it wasn't that, it has to be one of the other definitions. Which? Let's have it. It is the barrel. The little gesture, as it were, puts it in italics. It is indeed an old-fashioned name for a barrel in Scotland. Very interesting juncture. 4-all. Lovely time for another word on which everything hinges. Boret. Timothy's go.
Boret is an old Cornish word, and it is a flat, oblong raft used by Cornish fishermen in the Helston River for, first of all, sowing the young oysters and later reaping the grown-up ones. It serves a double purpose.
Mm-hmm. And now Victoria.
A boret is a sort of special short flute used by apprentice bagpipers to practice their fingering on, which doesn't inflate the bag, so it doesn't make any noise. So it's a sort of silent bagpipe.
Oh, what a wonderful idea.
Now, what does Frank say?
I don't know how hot you are on falconry. It's always been something of a closed book to me. I know words like muse and Muir is a falconry expression, come to think of it. But a boret is one of those. And if you'll take my word for it, it's a peculiar hen hawk with an elongated body and wings. Both wings, otherwise it would fly around in circles.
They say then that boret is a female hawk. It is a special Cornish raft, and it is a short flute to enable you to play the bagpipes silently. Michael Jayston to choose.
Half a tick.
I'd take a whole tick as chance.
Well, yes, Frank, this falconry and the hen hawk and the elongated body and wings, it'd have to have, wouldn't it, as you said? I'm going to discount that. It sounds too ridiculous. Cornish flat raft, fishermen and oysters. No, I'm going to go for Victoria, the apprentice, the silent flute.
The short flute, she said. True or bluff? No. Oh, no. Let us now hear who gave the true definition, or let us see at least who gave the true one. Yes. There it is indeed. You see, it's a female hawk. That's what a boar it is. And there, what with it having been 4-all, it now has to be 5-4, and the ones who scored that extra mark were Frank's team. So Frank has won yet again. Let's have a look at poor old Arthur and Co. Pipped on the post. Look at them all. Still, I don't suppose they mind very much. Back next time with more words that they couldn't give away. Till then, goodbye from Timothy West, Michael Jayston, Victoria Glendinning, Sue Cook, Frank Muir,
Good night.
and Arthur Marshall. Goodbye.